Hello everyone, welcome to another Euro Fantasy video from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Az and I'm joined by Mr. David Monday. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, very good. It's really exciting to be talking about some different teams. It's a good change from who am I going to captain this week for another double game week. It's nice to be looking at a lot of players that we've kind of enjoyed in the Premier League, for example, seeing them play for their countries. And obviously I've been writing a lot of the articles on site about some of the teams that you've covered in Groups A and B. And it's really fun to sort of like overnight become a sort of self-professed expert in, say, Turkey or Switzerland or Austria.
So I'm sure that there are people that we're doing today. You know, that's what you're supposed to do. But
so Austria is the most recent one I've been looking at. So that'll be on site, I think, tomorrow or maybe the day after. But it's just great. It's just great. Kind of nice little buzz to sort of pretend you're this little expert on all these teams until, of course, we get told by people from these countries that we've got it all wrong. So
I know that's what I'm really enjoying. I'm really enjoying talking to different people who, you know, are supporting different national teams. I've been talking to like North Macedonia fans. I've been talking to Austrian fans, you know, Ukrainian fans. It's amazing the everyone sort of coming together just to enjoy the team. And you know, it's really interesting as well. A lot of the lower ranked teams are really positive about their chances. A lot of the fans of the highest ranked teams are really negative. Belgium fans, for example, not as optimistic as I thought they'd be. But yeah, really interesting. I'm just going to come back to what you said about the captains because I'm going to remind you of that when you're changing your captain every day for the next month.
Yeah, that's true. But at least it's not a double game week. That's the thing. That's
true.
all I mean is there's so many options now. You know, when the way the season had gone with FPL, it was just like in so many double games. It was just like the captain was really obvious all the time. Whereas there's a bit more room for manoeuvre on this because, of course, not only are there more teams to choose from, you've got the match day element too. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this game, and it's really fun.
Yeah, there is, and you know, I think in a way I was a little bit kind of daunted by it at first, but the more I think about it, I'm quite interested to see because it's a completely different game, right? There's having the ability to make subs and make captain changes and things like that is just something that I'm not used to at all. So what do you do when your captain gets 6 points in the first game? Do you gamble on someone like Ronaldo or Kane or someone to beat that, or do you just take the safety of that 6 points? So yeah, I don't know. It's
decisions.
It is absolutely. So today we're going to be talking about Group C. So in Group C we have Austria, the Netherlands, North Macedonia, and the Ukraine. I think again. I mean, I think the groups, particularly this year, are just so interesting. Like there's so many groups in which I'm really finding it hard to pick. You know, often first is sort of semi-obvious, and I guess the Netherlands are fairly certain to win this group, but second place, you've got to think Austria and Ukraine are going to be battling out for second place. But North Macedonia have had, that big result against Germany away from home in the qualifiers. No one's expecting them to do anything in this tournament. Could they surprise people? How do you reckon this group's going to pan out?
Yeah, I've got to say, I do think this is one of the harder groups to predict because I think, as you say there, there's each of these teams are capable of frustrating any of the others. And I think, as has been mentioned a lot, because it's a 24-team tournament and 3 teams can get through, provided they get the right results. And of course, we all remember that Portugal managed to draw 3 games, get out of their group, and then go on to win the tournament. It's a tried and tested method there, which I think is, personally, I prefer a 32-team World Cup where only the top 2 teams get through because it does lend to more attacking football. Whereas in this, you can maybe, cause a few problems for your opposition and see what happens.
And scrape through.
This is one of those groups where I think that could happen. And that's not to say any disrespect to any of the teams that are in it, but North Macedonia have got to be looking at, the results they've had recently in their qualification. They ran Romania close, lost 3-2, beat Germany, thrashed Liechtenstein, they've drawn with Slovenia. So like they're a team that can get results, and if they just get one, then maybe they're through. And any number of these teams is capable of being turned over. I mean, we all can remember at some point in our life, either if it's in the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, a Dutch team just imploding on itself at a major tournament. And there's already sort of whispers about sort of, I guess, unhappiness in the camp. Like there seems to be a bit of a minor controversy about who's vaccinated and who isn't. De Boer is kind of experimenting with
pulled out, isn't
he?
Yeah,
Sileson's out as well. Yeah. And which, I mean, to be fair, I mean, Tim Krul is a great goalkeeper, but still to lose a key member of the team at this late hour. And then it sounds like De Boer, so we're recording this on Wednesday, obviously. I think the Holland are playing tonight. It sounds like in their friendly, they're experimenting with like a 5-3-2 formation. So I feel like there is just at the back of my mind just wondering that some of these other teams could cause even Holland problems.
Well,
So
I mean,
I'm looking forward to it.
De Boer's got a lot to prove, isn't he? Because
Yeah.
the stint at Palace, I think, has really kind of affected his reputation there. And from what I understand, the kind of the attitude towards him from the Dutch supporters is quite mixed. So some are quite excited about Holland at the moment. They've got a good team. Obviously, they haven't got Van Dijk, which is a massive blow. But Depay's had an amazing season. They've got like Wijnaldum there, who always performs well. They seem to have, De Ligt looks great. Got a big move. So they've got players. I just wonder, can De Boer get the most out of them? Like I said, I think they should get through this group fairly comfortably. I think.
Yeah,
but
they've got a reputation for being a flat track bully, and so then this kind of group, you could say on paper, offers that for them a little bit. But of course, I mean, Ukraine qualified ahead of Portugal, so maybe we can expect good result. I mean, to be honest, so if I'm looking at my Dutch players for the fantasy game, I'm looking for more out of the Austria game, perhaps from the Dutch defence, because Austria play quite an attritional, uninspiring.
So that's game week 2.
Organised.
So it's game week 1 against the Ukraine for the Netherlands, which I think is the tough one.
Yeah, 100%. And then you've got to think that maybe North Macedonia are targeting the other two teams to maybe get their points. So perhaps maybe they've given it all they've got by the time they face the Dutch. And so then maybe that's where we're looking for the points. So the fact they're a flat track bully is helpful when they have a group like this. But still, at the back of my mind, I can think of so many times when the Dutch have been, they just let themselves down, even in these sort of scenarios. And then when you have all these things hanging over the team.
Well, they weren't even qualifying for tournaments fairly recently, were they? It's only now they've kind of got their act together a little bit. And I remember seeing the squad. Was it the World Cup or something? And just thinking this isn't a good team at all. But now it looks like they have got some players at least. Let's take a look at the qualifying stats. So the Netherlands did well in qualifying. They played 8, they won 6 of them, drew 1, lost 1, scored 24 goals, conceded 7, 4 clean sheets. Good record.
Yeah, Germany were in that group as well. So
yep.
If anyone's looking at and thinking, oh well, they lost a couple of points there in the draw and the defeat. Well, they had Germany there. So to finish where they did. I mean, but they also beat Germany as well as part of it. So they competed well within the group.
Bit of a theme here: Germany losing matches, which they probably should be expected to win. So the Ukraine, I find really interesting, and I've currently got one of their players in the different fantasy games that I'm looking at. So they won 6 of their 8. They drew 2. They scored 17 goals, only conceded 4, 5 clean sheets out of 8. So a lot of people are getting excited about their attacking assets, but defensively as well, their numbers are pretty good.
Yeah, and the thing is about that group is that, they had Portugal in it. So that's one of the most exciting. I mean, Portugal, I think, are a lot of people's favourites to go and even win this competition. And obviously the qualifying was a little while ago, but, for a long time, they've had a proper roster of really exciting attacking players. And they've come out of that group with no defeats, only 4 goals conceded. And the thing with Ukraine is they have sort of all of a sudden out of nowhere kind of put themselves in a really prosperous looking position because they didn't qualify for the World Cup, and it kind of looked like Shevchenko was going to get sacked because there was this sort of murmurings about is he really that much of a tactician, is he too much of an icon, and he doesn't have that much about him. Well, he's really put his stamp on this team now. And a big game that was really big for them was they beat Serbia 5-0, which I mean that's really, really impressive because I mean Serbia aren't they're not one of the top teams, but they're certainly one of those teams that are always going to give you a tough game.
They're a team you expect to see in this kind of tournament.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Slovakia there, for example. I always expect to see kind of Serbia, Slovakia, Czech Republic, these kind of guys. So for Serbia to have been beaten that badly and not be in the tournament at all is quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, it was a landmark game really for Ukraine in terms of, wow, this team really knows what they're doing. And then, of course, they've gone and got some results against Portugal as well and finished top of the group. So, yeah, this team, I think, they're a team that can do well at the tournament. And, yeah, but the thing is, because they're a team that haven't historically been at the forefront of tournament football, but there's a lot about them, it does mean that a lot of their players are quite kindly priced. And it's Malinowski, I think, is 7 million. you quite excited by?
I am.
Yeah.
Don't steal that.
I'll let you wax Liverpool.
That's my big tip for this tournament. So Austria. So David, I gave you one job for this podcast, which was to do this table. And Austria have played 8, but they've somehow won 6, drawn 1, and lost 3, which is more than 8. So I'm guessing they played 10.
Right. Yeah, sorry, that's my bad. They played 10 games. Austria's qualification is. Yeah, I mean, I was saying earlier they're a bit of an attritional team and they're not very inspiring to watch. It's weird because they have a lot of big name players who play in the Bundesliga or have played in the Premier League, like Arnautovic, for example. But neutrals are going to hate watching this team because the manager is traditionally conservative anyway. But then they lost the first 2 qualification games. They lost at home to Poland. And then they lost 4-2 in Israel. And to be honest, I mean, that kind of sums up what this group is about, is recording defeats that you just never expect.
Yeah.
And I actually had Alaba in my Euro 2016 team, and everyone had Austria down as the dark horses. And then, of course, they just completely flopped. And that sort of Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing is still there. Like, they can get results, but they're never going to do it in an exciting way. So, as I said, they lost the first 2 games in qualifying, and then they basically just through sort of like workman-like grit won. I think the next 6 or something 5 of the next 7, something like that. And then finished in second place, 6 points behind Poland. So, it was no bells and whistles. They did the job. And that's kind of what this team is all about. But they've also had some bad results as well. So I've got to be honest. I think this team is a team that I'm not really expecting too much excitement from. If they get through, it won't be in a way that will benefit fantasy players, because I don't think they're going to score many goals, and I don't think they're going to keep many clean sheets either. So
the sense I'm getting from fans is they've got a decent squad that should be performing a lot better than it is, but the system and the manager and the tactics just aren't working.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Alaba especially, they don't. Yeah. It's weird. He's like a world-class defender, and he's getting played like really far up the field for Austria, which again he's a bit of a trap possibly, because when you see in FPL we're so used to seeing this type of player, defender player playing in an attacking position, I'm going to get him straight away. But actually he's got a long list of games for Austria where he just hasn't replicated his Bayern Munich form in the national shirt, but it's possibly because he's just being played out of position. And he played most of this season for Bayern Munich as a centre back, so you can't just stick him on the left wing and expect.
So the reason I'm looking at Alaba is because their first game is against North Macedonia. So North Macedonia, from what I understand, have the worst qualification record in the tournament. They played 10, they won 4, they drew 2, they lost 4. I think they're the only team that actually managed to concede more goals than they scored themselves, with only 2 clean sheets. And to me, I don't want to be nasty to any North Macedonian fans, because you must be absolutely buzzing to have your side in the Euros, and to try and prove people like me wrong. But for me, I like this group. I like looking at players in this group because they're going to be playing they're going to be playing North Macedonia, and I think they're the weakest team. Simple as that. So when I'm looking to build my fantasy drafts, it's got to include some players that are playing in that fixture. Yeah,
I think so. I think if anyone is looking for an Austria defender on that, the only thing is Alaba is listed as a midfielder, which is irritating.
Because he's not in fan team. In fan team, he's a defender.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I mean, again, that just shows the different strategies people have to play between the 2 different games. There's, if you're looking for defenders for Austria on the Uefa game, then it's you perhaps want to look at like Lehner, who plays on the right. He plays the right back. Actually had a few assists during qualification, but he's 5 million, and I still just don't really trust. And so Dragovic as well, the centre back, is 5 million as well. I still just don't really trust this Austrian defence. They're a team that seem kind of quite good at letting people down, and I don't know. It's hard to get too excited about them. I mean, I'd like to see them do well, because I said they were my dark horses 5 years ago and let me down then. Maybe they can make right for it now.
Yeah. Well, let's go through the squads of the 4 teams in this group. So we'll start with the Netherlands. I mean, De Ligt is massively owned. I mean, De Ligt. I hate trying to pronounce names. I feel like such an idiot at all times. But I mean, 38% ownership for him, which I think makes him one of, if not the most highly owned defender in the game, which I'm quite surprised at, because I know
Diaz is the only one with more.
Is he? Diaz is the only one? Yeah. So I'm a bit surprised with that, because I don't really associate Netherlands with, really solid, spectacular displays. They haven't got Van Dijk there. I think this group is it could be tricky with the Ukraine as well, especially in their first game too. So yeah, 38% for him is high. I mean, then you've got Depay at 13% and De Jong that I know a lot of people are excited about at 13%. Depay to me is the one. He is the one, and I think aside from Lukaku and Kane, who I'm backing to score loads of goals in the group stages, Depay to me he just seems absolutely perfect for this kind of game, especially in fan teams. I mean, in fan team he's rewarded for shooting, basically, not even scoring. He gets points for having a shot on target. He's on everything: free kicks, penalties. He shoots on sight. He's in great form. I'm surprised that he's only 13% owned, if I'm being honest. Out of those three, have you got any of those three in your team or any you'd consider?
So I don't have any of them yet, but the one I would consider most is Depay, because this is, well, just fantasy football in general. You want to always be targeting the talisman, and he's one of these players who has managed to get himself into a position where he's in form for his club and in form for his country. So for Lyon this year, 20 goals, 12 assists, and 37 appearances, and then in qualifying. He was replicating that across qualifying as well. So he was the second top goal scorer for Holland with 6 goals and 7 assists. That's 13 goal involvements. Yeah. Wijnaldum was the top goal scorer. I guess we can, yeah. I mean, he's an 8 million midfielder. So, and there's a possibility he does play a slightly more advanced role for Holland, but I don't know. It's probably just FPL bias, but I just look at him and think I'd never own him in FPL, so I don't want to pay.
I hear that, but when you look at his heat map and you look at the positions he takes up and the shooting ability he's got, and players are rewarding this for an extra point if they score outside the box as well, which might not be huge, but it's just a little bit of an extra. He's the kind of player that I can see rifling one in from outside the box. I just think you've got to look at him differently to FPL, because he's just. I mean, he scored a hat trick, didn't he? Sort of feels fairly recent. It's probably about 3 years ago, but I remember that, and that's when it kind of was like, oh wow, okay, Wijnaldum for the Netherlands is a different beast entirely. So
and he did go for a phase of. He did go for a phase of playing up front for Liverpool. Was in the year that they did over Barcelona in the Champions League. I think in some European games he was playing in a more advanced role for them. So. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly not an awful option, definitely. And I mean, he was a top goal scorer for Netherlands in qualifying. So, yeah, fair play. To answer your question on De Ligt, I think the defender I'm looking at here is, and again, I'm gonna go full as and be like, apologies for this bad pronunciation.
Full as isn't the thing. Let's nip that in the bud right now.
It's Owen Windle. I think that's how you pronounce it.
That sounds quite
but I'm sure it's wrong. There's a J, and I reckon the J is supposed to change it, but hey, we've just embarrassed ourselves in front of the Wizards, so there we are. But he's 4.5 million, and he plays at fullback, and he would be the guy that we'd be playing at fullback in a world where Daley Blind isn't quite ready, which still looks the case. So for him to because. The fixtures that are in this group do, I think, bode well for some Dutch clean sheets, just simply because, as I kind of already mentioned about Austria, they're a team that they play quite an uninspiring kind of game, and I think that it could be quite easy and they're also not very good, actually, if they can see the first goal, Austria. And we know there's attacking talent in this Dutch team, so as long as they can get the first goal, then there's a strong chance, I think, that the Dutch keep a clean sheet. So then to get it through a 4.5 million defender is quite nice if you think of the Netherlands as a premium team. Yeah. But then, of course, North Macedonia as well, with the kind of, whilst it feels disrespectful because, of course, it is their first tournament, if you're not kind of backing some of the bigger nations to keep a clean sheet against the team that had the worst qualification record and has never qualified before, then, I don't want to say why you're playing, but that's kind of the thought process we've got to think about in terms of predicting stuff. So I think there's definitely clean sheets available for them in those two games. But then he might not be the only way to go for it, because you could go for Tim Krul or Stekelenburg. So Lesson's obviously gone home, and he was 5.5. So him going, whilst it's very sad for him, great for fantasy managers, because it means we can either have Krul, Stekelenburg as a 4.5 million goalkeeper, again, in what could be a premium defence here. So that all kind of rests on, I would keep an eye on what happens in the pre-tournament friendlies to find out.
Well, I mean, if it's De Ligt versus Wijndal, I think Wijndal has to be the one, right? For $1 million less.
And he's got some assists as well. Like, he has assist potential as a fullback. So yeah.
Yeah, it is a tricky one with the Netherlands. It's that one where I think it's quite a tough group, and I don't think they're that good. But I do kind of want to invest it in some of them. I'll definitely start with Depay. I think
Yeah.
even though he's got quite a tricky match day one against Ukraine, I still fancy him to do well. Wijnaldum would be a good alternative. I think going for both of them is probably a bit overkill, especially for that first one. But yeah, certainly defender as well isn't a bad pick. Okay, so moving over to the Ukraine. So they've got no players over 10% ownership. Their highest owned player is a 4 million midfielder, who I'm guessing most people are just getting in because they had 4 million left and they wanted to get someone in. So Zinchenko is really interesting here. So he's a 5-5, but he's a defender, and he does not play in defence for the Ukraine. He
Yeah.
plays at a very, very attacking, in a very attacking position for them. I like the look of him a lot, especially in that North Macedonia game. He's going to be a dead cert in my team. What do you think? I mean, that because I'm looking at playing the Limitless chip in game week 2. So that's when the Ukraine play North Macedonia. So even though Zinchenko isn't one of the most expensive players, and I can get whoever I want, he'll definitely be in my side.
Yeah, well, I mean, even with that chip, you're going to want to try and find some value, like somewhere, right? Like, as in, you're going to want to go for a guy that is probably not that well owned, and so then you think that at 5.5, if not everyone's playing the Limitless chip, and then they just probably won't go for him. So it could be a good differential there. More so, I think, for the clean sheets than perhaps necessarily goals. The one thing that kind of struck me about Ukraine's qualifying record was that the goals did seem quite spread around the team, which I'm sure is great for the team, but it does sometimes make it a little bit hard to pin down just like one guy. So, Yaremchuk had 4 goals, Malinovsky 3 goals, Shiankov 3 goals, and then you had another 5 players either on 2 or 1 goal. One of them was Yarmolenko, and one of them was Zinchenko. So he can get something, but I think it's probably more from the clean sheet perspective necessarily than too much more. But that's not to say that he can't do other stuff. But I think, a Ukraine clean sheet against North Macedonia wouldn't exactly be, out of this world prospect, especially when they only conceded 4 goals in qualifying. So, a decent option. But I mean, I suppose now's the time for you to tell us a bit more about Malinovsky, right? You seem so excited about him. With good reason. His stats are great.
They are, and he's one of those players who, before every tournament, you read a lot of stuff. I mean, I know you're reading like the 442 mags and all that, and reading articles on Scout and trying to get as much of a sense. And everything I read just keeps coming back to Malinovsky and just how I haven't seen him play. I've watched a load of highlight reels of him, but it's the fact that he's a bit like a De Bruyne, right? He's on the set pieces. He just makes things happen for the team, and he's very direct in the way he passes the ball, and he's very accurate. And if you actually watch his highlight reel, he's playing for Atlanta. He had a good record this year, but he puts the ball on their head and they miss it. His stats, which I've got a slide on his stats in a bit, but his stats are not representative, I don't think, of how many chances he created for that team, because it looked like they couldn't hit a barn door half the time. So I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, well, this is a group with North Macedonia in, so I want to kind of target that game. I'm looking at like Yaremchuk, if that's pronounced right, I apologise if it's not. 7 mil forward, which is decent, 0% owned, but Yaremchuk takes up one of those really, really precious forward spots. So Malinovsky just fits because 7 million is a good price. I mean, he's competing against the likes of like Chiesa, Mason Mount, like you say, but he is the absolute heartbeat of this whole side. So he's someone that I'm definitely gonna start with in my side. So I'm gonna end up starting with Depay and Malinovsky, and that first game is gonna be really interesting for me.
Hopefully it's a goal fest.
Yeah, probably 0-0.
In that case. Yeah, it's going to be a 0-0 now.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, I mean, there's not really too many other players that I'm looking at here. No. I mean, Yarmolenko,
he's a bit too expensive, isn't he? I mean,
when you 8.5, and
Malinovsky is clearly so much more central to this team. So
I don't know why anyone would go for Yarmolenko given the
I think he has played up front. From time to time, and he's done it for West Ham as well. But it's hard to say he's really in full rhythm. I mean, if you look at the club seasons, for example, you can't always rely on that. But Malinovsky, I mean, it's 8 goals, 12 assists in Serie A this year. Yarmolenko, I couldn't tell you, got no idea. And
well, he's just been injured, isn't he? He's been at
Yeah.
West Ham and he's missed the vast majority of the season. I mean, he was always that player who was kind of supposed to be their talisman, but he just hasn't done it for West Ham. Hasn't done it for them. I mean, he scored. I remember he scored a goal or he scored a brace very early on in his West Ham career, and it kind of got everyone quite excited about him. But yeah, he's not for me. It's Malinovsky or Ramchuk for me, but. I will definitely be starting Manovsky. He's my one tip. Anyone listening wants has his tip for the tournament, it's him. Okay, so third we got Austria. So Alaba is highly owned. So he's rocking a 14% ownership, 5.5 mid. You know, I think we all hoped he'd be classified as a defender, given that he is a defender. But unlike Zinchenko,
like the reverse Lundstrom.
Yeah, unlike Zinchenko, where they've obviously looked at the club and seen he's playing at left back and you know made him an attacking mid. They've done the reverse of Alaba and gone, oh, he's a defender for his club, but he must be a defender, but he's not, like you say, because he gets shifted around kind of all over the place. I've got him in my team, so I'm going quite heavy on this group. The only reason I've got him is just to target that first match. He's on the set pieces. You're right though, he is useless for Austria. Absolutely useless. I mean, it's hard to be good when you're constantly played out of position. You know, one of the best defenders in the world, I'd probably say. One of the most consistent, you know, for Bayern Munich all this time. Just got his big move to, well, was it a big move? He's had a big move to Real Madrid on a free transfer to another
legacy
club.
move.
A legacy move, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? You're not a big fan of Alaba then for this tournament?
If he was a defender, then I would be considering him a lot more. But I just the vibe I'm getting from Austria is very much that this is a team that struggles to deliver when they're actually playing for their countries. But also the manager from what I can see, has a lot of criticism for what's sort of described as a bit of an overcautious approach. Doesn't play particularly adventurous football. It's interesting because it's still quite highly possession based, and there's a lot of pressing, but they just don't seem to do very much when they actually have the ball. And I suppose you could argue the fact they're playing a defender as a left attacking winger, maybe that's why. Maybe that's part of it. And it's just, you never know what you're going to get when they kind of range from kind of attritional workman-like performances to get the results to kind of mediocre defeats to people. The idea that they're playing Alaba in the wrong position is a big thing. So they maybe could get a couple of 1-0s, couple of 0-0s. Maybe that gets clean sheet points, but it won't benefit Alaba. But also the other thing is that I don't really know necessarily, or at least from what I can sort of gather from some of the media leading up to the tournament, it's not exactly entirely clear who's going to be playing up front, because Arnautovic generally is their most important attacking player. But he has missed some time. He's obviously been in China. I think that's been restricted for him in terms of his own movements. But also, having played in China, there's a big question marks over, in the 2 years he's been there, has his level slipped below what it was before? Because, of course, when he was at West Ham, he was obviously competing at a high level. But even then, he would kind of range from kind of disinterested to like Messi in the flick of a wrist. So who knows with him? But then there's also a couple of alternatives that could be playing as well. There's a couple of guys coming through that have either replaced him while he's been injured, or kind of. So there's this 23-year-old from Stuttgart, Kaladzik, who is the tallest player in the Bundesliga. So he kind of offers a lot, but he's more than just like a target man. He offers a lot as well. So there's a lot of promise around him. So maybe he plays up front instead of Arnautovic, for example. So there's just kind of a lot up in the air about what this team's even going to set up like. And so then we're quite used to that kind of method of process of elimination in FPL. If you're looking at a team, uncertain credentials, uncertain lineups, uncertain tactics, uncertain personnel, really, really puts me off. And I just think there's.
It's just a shame they've got that's such a good fixture in game week 1, right?
Yeah,
we're not gonna really get a sense of how good they are, what they look like, their shape, and then it'll be over, and then you won't want to invest in them after that match anyway.
If Macedonia can beat Germany, then they can beat Austria.
That is very true. I mean, Alaba's could be potentially a bit of a problem, because if I get him in game week 1. Match week 1, whatever it is. I always get it confused. You get him in for that, he blanks. Yeah, okay, then you've got the limitless chip in your game week 2, but then he comes back into your team for game week 3, and if he's blanked in that North Macedonia game, I'm not going to want him for that third. Where do you really go for a 5.5 mid? It's going to be hard to move him. I mean, a few people mentioned Sabitzer to me. 8 million is a lot, but at least it gives you that flexibility to move them to another player back for game week 3 when, so you take a bit of a punt for that first match. Hope Austria, beat North Macedonia quite comfortably, which I think we both think is probably fairly unlikely, but you never really know. And then you move them out a bit easier. So I don't mind. I actually don't mind it when I see teams that have taken a bit of a punt on some of these players. Kalajic, who you mentioned, could be one as well, but again takes up that forward spot. And I just don't think the forwards are where we should be taking punts. I think if you're going to take a punt, if you're going to take a punt,
too many great options.
Midfield, there is,
and not enough slots to have them. Then you've just got to, like you said, the forward slots have to be like you nailed on players. Like I'm looking at Kane, Lukaku, and then maybe a punt on like a Zuba or Pukki. But for the most part,
well, I've got Depay, Kane, and Lukaku, and I don't think that's good.
Talking about Group C, I should have said Depay instead of a Russian and a Finnish.
Got you on the wrong video. Okay, so let's talk about North Macedonia. I mean, it's Alioski really who's quite interesting. 4.5 defender. It's very rare that a left back is kind of your star player. I guess for Scotland as well. probably Robertson is their main man, but I mean they have got
Tierney as well.
Other players, Tierney and McGinn and these guys. Yeah, exactly. And having to put Tierney in. Poor Tierney. I mean, he's never going to play at left back again. He does such a good job at centre back as well. But yeah, he's a class player. But yeah, Alioski, I think he's on penalties for North Macedonia as well. Right. Obviously, a massive draw. Very, very, very attacking. And he does seem to me like quite a good player to have in your team who you could just sub out. He plays quite early on in game week 1. You stick him in. He's against Austria. We don't really know what Austria are gonna do. He could get a clean sheet and an attacking return in that. If he blanks, take him out. He's a 4.5 defender. I've got him. I've got him in my team.
Yeah, same. Alioski does look like a good option to go with. I mean, obviously you can't always tell all from FPL, but I've been really impressed with him as an FPL asset. Now, even Leeds fans will tell you he's a bit inconsistent, but he did just start popping up with a lot of attacking returns towards the end of the season, and was basically the same price there as he is in this, because he was 4.5 for a lot of it, then dipped to 4.4, 4.3. You could argue that North Macedonia's clean sheet potential isn't quite as good as Leeds. I think that's quite an easy thing to argue, but then you top it up with the penalties. So we've already talked about how Austria are an uninspiring side who could easily just fail to really even ask Macedonia some questions. So yeah, why not try Alioski?
It's why I like this game, right? And I like that kind of manual sub, because he might not be someone who you'd want to bring in if your team was set at the start of the week and you were playing him. Could you think, oh god, North Macedonia could get turned over 4-0 or 5-0 in any of these games, But at the same time, if you have the ability to sub them out, if he gets minus points, doesn't even matter. Sub them out. There's always that chance that he gets a penalty, and they do surprise everyone.
Yeah, it's not even just penalties. He's good assister as well.
Yeah,
top for assists for Macedonia.
There's some decent 4.5 defenders. So there's like Denea for Belgium. There's Pau Torres for Spain. These are like elite level 4.5. But I would put Alioski right up there with them. I think he's a great pick.
Yeah, he does look good. And yeah, just to clarify on that stat, basically since 2019, since qualifying began, in all the games they played, he's top for assists for Macedonia with 7. But second is Elmas, who he looks quite good because he's their top goal scorer in that time. He scored 7 goals across that sort of the couple of competitions they played, and so that includes World Cup qualifiers, Nations League, Euro qualifying as well. 7 goals and 4 assists, and he's a 6 million midfielder. I think he's 21, so he is like a big, exciting, upcoming talent. Plays on the left wing. But he looks like a midfield player. It was around 6 million. He can get goals and assists. In FPL, you'd be quite excited about that. If he was, say, playing at a newly promoted team. I mean, Ryan Fraser could fill that role once. That kind of a bit of a punt on a unknown with a decent record and a decent price. He could be worth looking at as well, especially if we're thinking that we're kind of planning our teams around match day 1. I would definitely argue that Macedonia's easiest match is Austria.
Yeah.
Taking a punt on a 6 million midfielder, limitless chip game week 2, and then sell him for the Dutch game, or maybe even keep him if he's done well across both games.
Yeah.
He looks good for a punt as well, and he's selected by absolutely nobody
I know.
apparently. So
The amount of 0% owned players who I think you could make a case for in this game does show that there are some really good differentials out there to consider. It's been like that in all the groups I've looked at. I've been really surprised with 0% owned, 1% owned. You mentioned Juba. I mean, he's really low owned. I think he's like 2% or something, 3%. These are guys that can make a big difference. There's no real template I can see in this game that really strongly emerging. There's a few kind of core players, but all the other players in the squad are completely open. Yeah, just going to mention that I had when I put my tweet out asking for some fans' kind of opinions on this. I was so many Ukrainian supporters, so many North Macedonian supporters as well. I think there's some North Macedonian fans in the chat now. So, for example, Stefan says Pandev's on pens, but he's old.
So, he's 37. He made his international debut something like 20 years ago, and it's like a fairy tale story. So if you like your Euro stories, because he wouldn't be the first guy, you know what I mean, like to come to Absolutely. A Euro at age 37 and light it up. So
yeah, amazing.
Good shout.
And Stefan also mentions Ristovski, who's nailed at right back, bargaining for 4 million because they play quite attacking with the fullbacks. So again, you know, if you're looking for 4 million defenders to get, then there's one right there for you. 2% owned. Right, so for the final thing, I've just picked out what I think are the key players for each side, just to give a bit more stats on them. We've talked about these in already, so we don't need to spend too much time on this. But I mean, for Holland, for me, it's Depay. You know, 20 goals, 12 assists, 37 appearances. It's a great return. I mean, he was so poor at United. It did not do it at all in the Premier League. He kind of went off again. I thought that was kind of maybe it for him, but he has really, really turned it on this year, and like you said, delivers continuously for Netherlands as well. So I will definitely be starting with him in fan team and in the North game. I'm backing him to have a good tournament. Anything to add on Depay or?
No, absolutely. No, mate, you've covered it there. And just the Man United thing, if anyone is worried about that period in his life, very much in the past.
Yes.
Then,
yeah, it was a strange time. I mean, look at Di Maria as well, kind of around the same time, wasn't it? For the same time, and now he's been smashing as well. Yep. So for Ukraine, I've gone for Malinovsky. He's, again, a bit like Depay. He's one of my big tips for this tournament. I think he's going to absolutely shine. There's certain players I'm just really excited about seeing. I'm really excited to see Phil Foden. I really hope he takes it to another level, his game. He's been incredible this year for City anyway. Missed out on the Champions League final. I think if Southgate gives him a chance, he's one that could go, you know, really take his stock high. And I think Malinovsky's one as well. I mentioned Jonas Wind as well in the last video, playing for Denmark too. So these are guys who, you know, the country's putting a lot of expectation on, you know, quite young players to really take themselves up a gear. So these are his stats. So 36 appearances, 8 goals, 12 assists. Honestly, though, watch his highlight reel, because the misses his teammates make. That assist tally should be doubled without a doubt. So yeah, he's one that I really like the look of. For Austria, I've just gone for Alaba. I'm not particularly enamoured with him, in all honesty, especially with his classification as a mid. But you know, his stats: Bundesliga, 32 appearances, scored 2 goals, 3 assists. He does play,
defender.
Yeah, and he's a defender.
That's why.
Exactly, he's a defender. I mean, his stats for Austria aren't that impressive, but he's a lot more central to things, set pieces, and playing in a much more attacking side and formation and position. So I've got him in my team at the moment. I can't say I'm too thrilled with it though, but I probably will start with him just to target North Macedonia game. And finally, I mean, Alioski. I mean, it's, you know, the stats aren't going to be too amazing for a left back. In the Premier League, 36 appearances, 2 goals, 3 assists, 7 bookings. Like you said, though, towards the end of the season, he was a different player. Really attacking, really exciting to watch. And it's amazing to think, but North Macedonia's hopes of getting out of this group rest largely on his shoulders. So I hope, I'd love to see him have a big tournament, and I probably will start with him as well, just in the hope that he gets a clean sheet and a goal.
He's a great watch from a neutral perspective, because you never quite know what you're going to get from him. We've seen brilliance on the overlap for Leeds. 2 assists in the last 4 matches. Then of course you have a few moments where you question his sort of defensive nous a little bit. But I can't remember which game it was. I think it was the the last, it might have even been the last game of the season where he just kind of had this one of these moments at the back post where it was like the ball's going in the goal. All he really needs to do is swing a leg at it, and he just kind of has a thing, kind of trip over, and then kind of like trips over into clearing it over the other line. So, he makes it enjoyable. But of course, he's also a character as well, because we all remember him kind of going to someone as well. So he's got to be so entertaining. So, 4.5 million. Maybe gets you some points, maybe gets you some laughs. Why not?
That's what it's all about, right? Points and laughs. So that's it. That's Group C done. Thank you, David, for joining me. You're going to be doing a few more of these with me. I think one tomorrow, and then we'll be doing one on Friday as well. But if you enjoyed the video, hit like, subscribe to the channel. You will be editing and publishing more articles on this group over the coming days. So make sure you check Fantasy Scout to read up on those. I will put links in the description as soon as they're on the site. But for now, thanks everyone, and enjoy the sun.